The Galactic Federation had existed for 12,000 years. In that time, they had cataloged over 40,000 sentient species across the known universe. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds, but nothing in their long history had prepared them for humanity. Ambassador Zyxthel stood at the observation window of the Federation Council station, watching the small blue planet slowly rotate in the distance. Earth, the humans called it. The Federation had a different name for it. They called it Deathworld 7, one of the most hostile environments ever discovered that still somehow supported intelligent life. "You seem troubled, Ambassador," said a soft voice behind him. Zyxthel turned his 4 eyes toward the speaker. It was Council Member Vera, a luminary from the peaceful world of Gentle 12. Her body glowed with a soft purple light, as all her species did when they were calm. "I am reviewing the human survival data again," Zyxthel said. His translator implant converted his clicking sounds into words she could understand. "It does not make sense." Vera floated closer to the window. Her species had evolved in low gravity and had never developed legs. "What troubles you about it?" "Everything," Zyxthel admitted. "Their planet has a gravity index of 9.8. Most species cannot function above 5. Their atmosphere contains oxygen, which is a corrosive and flammable gas. Their sun bombards them with radiation. Their planet has active geological events that destroy entire regions, and their weather systems can produce winds capable of lifting structures into the air." Vera's glow flickered with concern, yet they survived. "They did more than survive," Zyxthel said. "They thrived. They spread across their entire planet into every environment. They live in frozen wastelands where water becomes solid. They live in burning deserts where rain never falls. They even built cities on the edges of their tectonic fault lines, knowing full well that the ground beneath them could shake at any moment." The doors behind them opened, and a human walked in. Commander Sarah Chen was the first human to serve as a liaison officer on the Federation Council station. She was average height for her species, which still made her taller than most Federation members. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her brown eyes moved constantly, taking in everything around her. "Ambassador, Council member," she said, nodding to each of them. "I was told you wanted to see me." Zyxthel found himself staring at her, as he often did when humans were nearby. She moved with a confidence that seemed almost aggressive, her steps heavy on the deck plating. He had to remind himself that she was not being threatening. Humans simply carried more mass and moved through higher gravity than other species. "Yes, Commander, we have received reports from Outpost 7 in the Terminus sector. There has been an incident." Sarah's expression changed. Her brow lowered and her jaw tightened. Zyxthel had learned to read human faces over the past year, and he recognized this as concern. "What kind of incident?" "A plasma storm struck the outpost. All communications have been lost. The station's automated distress beacon activated, but then it too went silent." Sarah pulled out her personal data pad and began typing. "How many people were stationed there?" 47 Federation scientists and support staff," Vera said, "and 3 humans." Sarah looked up. 3. I thought we only had 2 researchers assigned there, Dr. Marcus Webb and Dr. Yuki Tanaka." "A supply ship arrived 3 days before the storm," Zyxthel explained. "The pilot, a human named James Rodriguez, was waiting for his cargo to be unloaded when the storm hit." Sarah nodded slowly. "What's the survival estimate?" There was a long pause. Vera's glow dimmed to almost nothing, which Zyxthel knew was a sign of great sadness among her people. 0%, Zyxthel said quietly. "The plasma storm registered at Category 7 on our severity scale. Category 5 is considered unsurvivable for most species. The outpost shields and life support systems would have failed within the first hour. Surface temperatures reached levels that would melt standard construction materials. Radiation levels exceeded fatal doses by a factor of 100. Sarah stared at him. "You're telling me everyone is dead?" "We are telling you that no one could have survived those conditions. A rescue mission has been deemed unnecessary. The Federation Council has voted to send a memorial probe instead to honor those lost." Something changed in Sarah's face. Her jaw set harder and her eyes narrowed. Zyxthel felt an instinctive urge to step backward, though he did not understand why. "With respect, Ambassador, I disagree with that assessment." Vera drifted between them, her glow brightening slightly. "Commander Chen, I understand this is difficult. Losing members of your species is always painful, but the data is clear. No living creature could survive what happened at Outpost 7. "Maybe no creature you've encountered before," Sarah said, "but you've never seen what humans can do when we decide we're not ready to die." Zyxthel exchanged a look with Vera. This was the attitude that made humans so difficult for other species to understand. They refused to accept reality when it conflicted with their desires. "Commander, I have studied your species extensively. I have great respect for human resilience, but there are physical limitations that no amount of determination can overcome. The laws of the universe apply equally to all species." Sarah smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Do they? Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. Our planet tried to kill us every single day for 200,000 years. Ice ages, plagues, famines, natural disasters. And every single time we found a way to survive. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we are the most stubborn creatures in the entire universe." She stepped closer to Zyxthel, and he found himself unable to move. Something about her presence commanded attention. "I'm not asking you to send a rescue mission. I'm telling you that I'm going with or without Federation support. And when I get there, I expect to find 3 humans alive, because that's what we do. We survive." Zyxthel watched her leave, her heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. When the doors closed behind her, he turned to Vera. "She is delusional. The conditions at Outpost 7 would have killed any carbon-based life form within minutes." Vera's glow had shifted to a thoughtful orange. "Perhaps, but I have learned something in my 200 years of life, Ambassador. Never bet against a human's survival. They have a way of making the impossible seem merely difficult." Zyxthel clicked his mandibles in frustration. "The Council will not approve a rescue mission. It would be a waste of resources." "Then we will not tell the Council until Commander Chen has already departed," Vera said calmly. "I will provide her with a ship from my personal fleet. Consider it an investment." "An investment in what?" Vera looked at the blue planet spinning in the darkness. "In understanding the most fascinating species we have ever discovered. If humans truly can survive what happened at Outpost 7, then everything we know about biology, about survival, about the limits of life itself may need to be reconsidered." Zyxthel wanted to argue, but he found he could not. Despite his certainty that the mission was pointless, a small part of him wanted to know, wanted to see if humans really were as impossible as they seemed. "Very well," he said finally, "but I am coming with her. If humans can survive the unsurvivable, I want to witness it for myself." The ship was called the Swift Hope, and it was one of the fastest vessels in Vera's personal fleet. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the pilot's seat, her hands moving across controls that had been modified to accommodate human fingers. Behind her, Ambassador Zyxthel was strapped into a specially designed harness that protected his fragile exoskeleton from the forces of acceleration. "How long until we reach the Terminus sector?" he asked. "At maximum speed, about 18 hours, Sarah replied. "But I'm going to push the engines beyond their recommended limits. We can cut that down to 12. Zyxthel's mandibles clicked rapidly. "That could damage the ship." "It could, but every hour we waste is an hour those people have to survive without help. If there's even a chance they're alive, I'm not going to let engine warranty slow me down." The ambassador watched her work, fascinated despite himself. Human hands were remarkably dexterous, with 5 flexible digits that could operate machinery with surprising precision. Their eyes, though limited to a narrow spectrum of light, tracked multiple data feeds simultaneously. And their brains, though smaller than many species, seemed capable of processing information at remarkable speeds. "Commander, may I ask you a question?" Sarah didn't look up from her controls. "Go ahead." "Why are you so certain your people are alive? I have seen the data. I have calculated the probabilities. Everything points to their deaths." Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer but somehow stronger. "Because I know what we're capable of. When I was 12 years old, my grandfather told me about his father, my great-grandfather. He was a coal miner in a place called West Virginia. There was a cave-in. 13 men were trapped underground for 14 days. No food, almost no water, temperatures near freezing. Rescue teams told their families they were dead." "What happened?" "All 13 walked out on their own 2 feet. They survived by rationing their lunch pails, drinking condensation off the walls, and taking turns sleeping in a pile to conserve body heat. When the rescue team finally broke through, they found the men had already started digging from their side." Zyxthel processed this information. "That is impressive, but surely not comparable to the conditions at Outpost 7. Maybe not in specifics, but it's the same principle. Humans don't give up. We don't accept death just because the numbers say we should. My great-grandfather survived because he decided that dying wasn't an option. And I believe that Dr. Webb, Dr. Tanaka, and James Rodriguez made the same decision when that storm hit." The ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace. Zyxthel felt his stomach lurch unpleasantly. He envied humans their robust digestive systems, which seemed capable of handling almost any form of travel. "Tell me more about the humans stationed at Outpost 7, he said, partly to distract himself from the nausea. Sarah smiled slightly. "Dr. Marcus Webb is a xenobiologist, 53 years old, former military medic before he went into research. The man survived 2 expeditions that went completely wrong. Once, he was stranded on a moon with toxic atmosphere for 6 days, built himself a breathing filter out of sand and his own clothing. Remarkable." Dr. Yuki Tanaka is younger, 31. She's a geologist, specializes in volcanic activity. Grew up in Japan, a country that sits on multiple fault lines. She's been evacuated from natural disasters 4 times in her life. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. She knows how to survive chaos. "And the pilot?" Sarah's smile widened. "James Rodriguez is something special, former test pilot for experimental spacecraft. The man has crashed 5 different ships and walked away from every single one. His colleagues call him the cockroach because they can't figure out how to kill him." Zyxthel filed this information away. 3 humans with extensive survival experience. Perhaps their chances were slightly better than 0. Perhaps 0.001% instead of 0. It still wasn't enough to justify hope, but as he watched Commander Chen work, he found himself wanting to believe anyway. 12 hours later, the Swift Hope dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Terminus sector. What they saw made Zyxthel's heart sink. The space around Outpost 7 was filled with debris. Fragments of metal and plastic drifted in the void, glinting in the light of the distant star. The plasma storm had passed, but its effects were devastating. Entire sections of the station's outer ring were simply gone, torn away by forces beyond imagination. "Life signs?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. Zyxthel ran the scanners. "Negative. The background radiation is still too high for accurate readings. I am detecting heat signatures, but they could be from residual fires or chemical reactions." Sarah guided the ship closer, weaving between the larger pieces of debris. The main structure of the outpost was still partially intact, though badly damaged. Emergency lights flickered inside, casting red shadows through cracked viewports. "I'm going in," Sarah said. "Commander, the radiation levels are still dangerous, even for humans. I've taken worse doses in training." She was already pulling on her environmental suit, checking seals and oxygen levels. "You stay here and monitor communications. If I find survivors, I'll need you ready to receive them." Zyxthel wanted to protest, but he knew it would be useless. Humans were notoriously difficult to dissuade once they had made a decision. It was one of their most frustrating and admirable traits. "Be careful," he said instead. Sarah paused at the airlock, looking back at him. "Ambassador, I'm going to find my people, and then we're going to have a very interesting conversation about what's possible and what isn't." The airlock cycled, and she was gone. Zyxthel watched her suit's beacon move through the debris field toward the damaged station. He found himself doing something he had not done in decades. He was hopping. The interior of Outpost 7 was a nightmare of twisted metal and flickering lights. Sarah moved carefully through the corridors, her suit's sensors mapping her path. The radiation alarm beeped constantly, but she ignored it. She had work to do. Bodies floated in the corridors. Federation scientists mostly. Their environmental suits had failed in the initial blast and they had died quickly. Sarah paused at each one, checking for signs of life, finding none. But she noticed something as she moved deeper into the station. The damage patterns were strange. In some areas, the destruction was complete, but in others, makeshift barriers had been erected. Emergency bulkheads had been welded shut. Someone had been trying to create safe zones. Her heart beat faster. She reached the central hub of the station and found the first real sign of life. A message had been scratched into the wall with what looked like a piece of metal. "Survivors in Storage Bay 7. If you find this, we are still fighting. WEBB." Sarah smiled. Of course they were still fighting. That's what humans did. Sarah followed the emergency maps toward Storage Bay 7, climbing over debris and squeezing through gaps that would have been impossible for most Federation species. Another advantage of human flexibility and determination. When she reached the bay, she found it sealed from the inside. The door controls were dead, but someone had welded reinforcing plates over the entire frame. They had turned the storage bay into a fortress. Sarah knocked on the door with her suited fist, 3 times, then 2 times, then 3 times again. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then from inside she heard 3 knocks, 2 knocks, 3 knocks. "This is Commander Sarah Chen, Federation Liaison Office," she called. "I'm here to get you out." There was a pause, then a familiar voice came through a crack in the welding. "Well, it's about time. We were starting to run low on things to burn for heat." Sarah laughed. It was a sound of pure relief. "Webb, you stubborn old man. I knew you'd still be alive." "Alive and annoyed," came the reply. "Give us 10 minutes to cut through our own welding. We made this door very hard to open for a reason." Sarah leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. They had survived. Against all odds, against all probability, against the very laws of nature as the Federation understood them, 3 humans had survived the unsurvivable. Dr. Marcus Webb stepped through the newly cut hole in the door, looking like he had fought a war and won. His environmental suit was covered in scorch marks and improvised patches. His face was gaunt and pale from radiation exposure, but his eyes were bright and alive. Behind him came Dr. Yuki Tanaka, equally battered but equally alive. She carried a makeshift container filled with data storage devices. "The research," she said when Sarah looked at the container. "If we were going to die, we were going to make sure our work survived. But then we decided we weren't going to die either." Last came James Rodriguez, the pilot. He limped badly, one leg clearly injured, but he was grinning from ear to ear. 3 days, 14 hours, and 27 minutes, he said. New personal record for surviving something unsurvivable. I'm definitely putting this on my resume. Sarah helped them through the debris-filled corridors, back toward the ship. As they walked, Webb explained what had happened. The plasma storm hit faster than our sensors predicted. We had maybe 3 minutes of warning. The other species on the station panicked. They tried to evacuate, tried to reach the escape pods, but there wasn't time. What did you do? I grabbed Tanaka and Rodriguez and ran for the storage bay. It was the most shielded part of the station, designed to protect sensitive equipment from radiation. We sealed ourselves inside with whatever supplies we could find. Tanaka continued the story. The first 12 hours were the worst. The temperature inside the bay reached 60 degrees Celsius. We stripped down to our underwear and rationed our water. When our emergency batteries ran out, we burned equipment for heat during the cold cycles. What about air? Sarah asked. The life support systems must have failed. Rodriguez laughed, then winced at the pain from his leg. That was fun. We found a botanical experiment that some researcher had abandoned, plants in sealed containers. We broke the seals and let the plants clean our air. It wasn't perfect, but it kept us breathing. And the radiation. Webb's expression grew serious. We're all going to need treatment. The levels were higher than anything we've ever experienced, but we're alive. We found some lead shielding in the storage bay and built a small shelter inside our shelter, slept in shifts under the lead while the worst of the storm passed. They reached the airlock where Sarah's suit had attached to the station. She helped the survivors into the Swift Hope one at a time, feeling a strange mixture of pride and awe. These 3 humans had done something that the entire Galactic Federation considered impossible. They had looked death in the face and simply refused to accept it. When they were all aboard, Sarah sealed the airlock and headed for the cockpit. Ambassador Zyxthel was waiting, his 4 eyes wide with what she had learned to recognize as shock. They survived, he said. It wasn't a question, but it sounded like he couldn't quite believe his own words. They survived, Sarah confirmed. Ambassador, I'd like you to meet Dr. Marcus Webb, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, and James Rodriguez, 3 stubborn humans who didn't feel like dying today. Zyxthel stared at the survivors. They stared back at him, looking exhausted but unbroken. This is not possible, he said finally. The conditions you experienced should have killed you within minutes, hours at most. You survived for almost 4 days. Webb shrugged. Guess someone forgot to tell us we were supposed to die. The ambassador's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this response. This is not a joke. The laws of biology, of physics, of thermal dynamics all say that you should be dead. How are you standing here? It was Tanaka who answered. Her voice was tired but patient, like she was explaining something simple to a child. Ambassador, humans don't believe in the impossible. We believe in the not yet possible. There's a difference. She moved past him toward one of the emergency medical stations, where Rodriguez was already checking the supplies. Back on Earth, we have a saying, where there's a will, there's a way. It means that if you want something badly enough, if you refuse to accept any other outcome, you'll find a way to make it happen, even if that way hasn't been invented yet. Zyxthel followed her, his steps uncertain. But your bodies are not designed for such extremes. Your biology has limits. Sure, Rodriguez said, pulling out a medical scanner to check his injured leg. And humans spend most of their existence finding ways to push past those limits. It's kind of our thing. Sarah began powering up the ship for departure. Behind her, she could hear Webb explaining their survival in more detail to the ambassador. How they had used their knowledge, their creativity, and their sheer determination to solve problems that should have been unsolvable. The journey back to the Federation Council Station took 18 hours. Sarah didn't push the engines as hard on the return trip. The survivors needed rest, and the ambassador needed time to process what he had witnessed. Zyxthel spent most of the journey in silence, occasionally typing notes into his personal data device. Sarah could tell he was struggling with something, but she didn't push. Some things needed to be worked through alone. It was only when they were a few hours from the station that he finally spoke. "Commander Chen, I must apologize." Sarah looked up from her controls. "For what?" "For doubting you, for doubting your species. I believed I understood what was possible in this universe. I believed that the laws of nature were absolute. You have shown me that I was wrong." "You weren't completely wrong," Sarah said gently. "The laws of nature are real. We don't break them. We just find ways to work within them that no one else has thought of." Zyxthel considered her words carefully. "Is that why humans are so successful? Because you refuse to accept limitations?" "Partly, but it's also because we help each other. Did you notice that when the storm hit, the three humans found each other? They could have tried to survive alone, but instead they formed a team. They combined their knowledge and skills. Webb's medical training, Tanaka's geological expertise, Rodriguez's mechanical abilities. Together, they were stronger than any of them alone." The ambassador nodded slowly. "Cooperation for survival. Many species do this." "True, but how many species do it under those conditions? When everything is falling apart, when death seems certain, most creatures focus on individual survival. Humans go the other way. The worse things get, the more we come together." She pointed toward the back of the ship, where the three survivors were sleeping in the medical bay. Those three people had never met before 3 months ago. They came from different countries, different backgrounds, different specialties. But when disaster struck, they became family. They protected each other, supported each other, and refused to let each other die. When the Swift Hope docked at the Federation Council station, they were met by an enormous crowd. Word had spread about the rescue mission and its impossible success. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness the return of the survivors. Council member Vera floated at the front of the crowd, her body glowing bright gold with excitement. Beside her stood delegates from the Mantari, the Silicoids, the Aquarians, and 100 other species. The airlock opened and the 3 human survivors walked out. They were weak, still recovering from their ordeal, but they walked on their own 2 feet. They refused to be carried. A murmur ran through the crowd. Zyxthel heard words like impossible and miraculous in a dozen different languages. Dr. Webb stopped in front of Vera and bowed slightly. "Council member, thank you for sending Commander Chen. We would have lasted a few more days, but I'm glad we didn't have to find out how many." Vera's glow flickered with emotion. "Dr. Webb, you have done something that our scientists believed could not be done. You have survived conditions that should have killed any carbon-based life form. How do you feel?" Webb considered the question. Then he smiled, and it was the smile of a man who had stared into the abyss and laughed. "Hungry," he said, "and ready for a hot shower, maybe not in that order." Laughter rippled through the crowd. It was a strange sound on a station where most species did not laugh, but somehow it felt right. Commander Sarah Chen stepped forward, addressing the assembled delegates. "Representatives of the Galactic Federation, I present to you 3 citizens of Earth who refuse to accept the impossible. Dr. Marcus Webb, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, and James Rodriguez survived conditions that your scientists said no one could survive. They did this through intelligence, creativity, determination, and an absolute refusal to give up." She paused, looking around at the thousands of eyes watching her. "This is what humanity offers the Federation. Not just our scientific knowledge or our military strength, but our spirit. The spirit that says no challenge is too great, no obstacle is too difficult, no situation is truly hopeless. We are a species that was forged in adversity, and we have learned to turn that adversity into strength." The crowd was silent, but it was an attentive silence. They were listening. We come from a world that many of you call a death world, and you're right. Earth is dangerous, hostile, and unforgiving, but we didn't let our planet destroy us. We adapted, we innovated, we survived, and in doing so we became something unique. Ambassador Zyxthel stepped forward, surprising everyone including Sarah. I was a skeptic, he admitted. I believed the rescue mission was a waste of resources. I believed there was no chance of survival. I was wrong. Not because I miscalculated the dangers, but because I failed to factor in the single most important variable, human determination. He gestured toward the 3 survivors. These individuals did not survive because they were lucky. They survived because they decided to survive. They looked at death and said, "Not today." This is not a trait I have observed in any other species, and I believe it is what makes humans valuable beyond measure. Council member Vera spoke next, her voice carrying across the station. In 12,000 years of galactic civilization, we have never encountered a species quite like humanity. You challenge our assumptions. You force us to reconsider what we believe is possible. And today, you have shown us that the limits we thought were absolute are nothing more than boundaries waiting to be pushed. She floated closer to Sarah, her glow shifting to a warm pink. The Federation Council will meet tomorrow to discuss what we have witnessed, but I believe I speak for many when I say that my perspective has changed. Humanity is not just worthy of membership in the Federation. Humanity may be exactly what the Federation needs. The crowd erupted in a mixture of sounds. Applause, clicks, whistles, and other forms of approval filled the air. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes, but she blinked them away. There would be time for emotion later. 3 days after the rescue, a formal hearing was held before the Federation Council. All 700 council members attended, representing species from across the known galaxy. Ambassador Zyxthel presented his report on the incident at Outpost 7, complete with data, analysis, and his personal observations. The survivors testified as well. Dr. Webb explained the biological adaptations that allowed humans to survive extreme conditions. Dr. Tanaka described the psychological factors that prevented panic and enabled clear thinking in crisis situations. James Rodriguez simply said he was too stubborn to die, which earned scattered laughter from the council members who understood humor. But it was Commander Sarah Chen who gave the testimony that changed everything. She stood before the council, a single human among 700 alien faces, and she spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and what her species was capable of. Council members, you have heard the facts of what happened at Outpost 7. You have seen the data and the analysis, but I want to share something that numbers cannot capture. I want to share what it means to be human. She took a deep breath. We come from a world where survival was never guaranteed, where every day was a battle against forces that tried to kill us. Disease, predators, disasters, each other. For 200,000 years we fought for our existence, and in that fight we developed something precious. We developed hope. Sarah's voice grew stronger as she continued her address to the council. Hope is not just a feeling. It is a tool. It is the belief that tomorrow can be better than today, that no problem is truly unsolvable, that there is always another option if we are willing to look hard enough. This is what kept our ancestors alive during ice ages and plagues. This is what drove us to explore our planet and then reach beyond it. And this is what kept 3 humans alive in conditions that should have killed them. She gestured toward the survivors, who sat in the audience with the other human observers. Dr. Webb, Dr. Tanaka, and Mr. Rodriguez did not survive because they were special. They survived because they are human, because every human carries within them the same fire that has burned in our species since we first stood upright on the African plains, the fire of defiance, the refusal to surrender, the absolute certainty that as long as we are breathing, we are still in the fight. Sarah looked around at the council members. meeting their various eyes and sensory organs with her own steady gaze. You call our home planet a death world, and you are right. Earth is one of the most dangerous environments for intelligent life that has ever been discovered, but we did not let it defeat us. Instead, we let it make us stronger. Every challenge, every disaster, every near-extinction event made us more resilient, more adaptable, more determined. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Galactic Federation has existed for 12,000 years. In that time, you have achieved wonders. You have unified thousands of species, created technologies beyond imagination, and built a civilization that spans the stars. But you have also grown comfortable. You have learned to accept limits, to define what is possible and what is not. Her voice softened. Humanity does not accept limits. We see them as challenges to be overcome. And while this may seem dangerous or unpredictable, I believe it is exactly what this Federation needs. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Council Member Vera floated forward, her glow shifting through colors that signified deep emotion. Commander Chen, the Federation Council has heard your words and observed your actions. We have witnessed what humanity is capable of, and we have reached a decision. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment. Everything her species had worked for over the past 50 years of contact with the Federation came down to this. Effective immediately, humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Federation, with all the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities that membership entails. A cheer erupted from the human observers. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. Some moments deserved tears. Vera continued, "Furthermore, the Council has voted to create a new department within the Federation structure. The Department of Extreme Survival will be headed by humans and will be responsible for developing new techniques and technologies for surviving hostile environments. Dr. Webb, Dr. Tanaka, and Mr. Rodriguez have been offered positions as founding advisors." Ambassador Zeichsel added, "And I have personally requested that Commander Chen be promoted to the rank of ambassador. She has shown extraordinary leadership, and I believe she is the perfect representative for humanity in the coming years." Sarah stood speechless, overwhelmed by the scope of what was happening. Everything her species had dreamed of since first contact was becoming reality. A year after the Harmony crisis that followed, where humanity saved 4 billion luminari from an asteroid collision, a monument was erected at Outpost 7. The station had been rebuilt, better and stronger than before, and it served as a research center dedicated to studying extreme survival conditions. The monument stood in the central plaza, depicting 3 human figures standing together, facing outward, their faces set with determination. A plaque at the base read, "In honor of Dr. Marcus Webb, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, and James Rodriguez, the first humans to prove that the unsurvivable was merely the not yet survived. May their example inspire all species to reach beyond what they believe is possible." Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the monument on the anniversary of the rescue, surrounded by representatives from across the Federation. "1 year ago," Sarah said, 3 humans refused to die. They looked at conditions that every expert in the galaxy said were unsurvivable, and they said, 'Watch us.' Today, we honor their courage and their stubbornness, but more than that, we honor the spirit they represent, the spirit that defines humanity." She turned to face the crowd. "We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest, the smartest, or the most advanced, but we may be the most determined. We come from a world that spent 200,000 years trying to kill us, and we are still here. We have survived ice ages and meteor impacts, plagues and wars, natural disasters and man-made catastrophes, and every single time we have come back stronger." Her voice rose with passion. "This is what we offer the Galactic Federation, not just our technology or our resources, but our unbreakable will. The certainty that no matter what challenges we face, no matter how impossible the odds seem, we will find a way. Because that is what humans do. We endure, we adapt, we overcome. Ambassador Zeichsel found Sarah after the ceremony, his 4 eyes bright with emotion. When we first met, you told me that humans survive because we are the most stubborn creatures in the universe. I did not believe you then. I believe you now. Sarah smiled. We're also the most hopeful. That's the secret, Ambassador. Stubbornness keeps us going, but hope gives us something to go toward. Without hope, stubbornness is just suffering. With it, stubbornness becomes strength. I have learned much from your species, he said. You have changed how I see the universe. You have changed how many species see the universe. Good changes, I hope. The best. He extended one of his appendages, mimicking the human gesture of handshaking. It has been an honor, Ambassador Chen, and I look forward to seeing what humanity does next. Sarah took his appendage and shook it gently. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. That's what the Federation is about, right? Different species working together, making each other stronger. Yes, Zeichsel agreed. And I believe humanity has made us all stronger simply by being among us. Sarah stood alone before the monument, looking up at the 3 figures who had started it all. Dr. Webb stepped up beside her. You know, when we were trapped in that storage bay, I never imagined it would lead to all this. Neither did I, Sarah admitted. But that's the thing about humans, isn't it? We never know what we're capable of until we're tested. And we always seem to surprise ourselves. Sarah nodded, thinking about all the challenges that lay ahead. The Federation was vast and complex, full of species who still didn't understand humanity and dangers that hadn't been discovered yet. There would be more impossible situations, more moments when survival seemed unlikely. But there would also be humans there to face them. Stubborn, hopeful, endlessly determined humans who had been forged on a Deathworld and refused to let the universe tell them what they couldn't do. Come on, she said to Webb, we've got work to do. They walked away from the monument, toward the future. Behind them, the 3 stone figures stood eternal, a reminder to all who visited of what humanity had proven on that terrible day. That the unsurvivable was merely unsurvived. That impossible was just a word. And that as long as there were humans in the universe, there would always be hope. The stars stretched out before them, full of mysteries and dangers and wonders beyond imagination. And somewhere in that vast expanse, humanity was just getting started. The Deathworld had forged them. The galaxy would shape them, but nothing in the universe would ever break them. Because that was what it meant to be human.